Hey, creative community. It's Michelle T. Berger here, and I'm so delighted to get a chance to talk with you today, leap year 2024. I wanted to take a moment to check in with you about how you're feeling about the year. Usually, this time around the year, we have pretty much forgotten our intentions around our big plans and big aspirations for our creative work. We've gotten over the holidays kind of. We maybe have gotten sick. We're just kind of coming out of all of that, I find. And so around this time of years, either people kind of get in panic mode because they feel like they're behind in terms of making progress on their creative work, or they feel like they're just so disconnected. So I wanted to address that. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the three, what I think are transformational practices for creative work that can kind of anchor us at any moment, but particularly as we're going into the next part of the year. And for those of you who don't know me, who maybe wandered onto the YouTube channel, my name is Michelle Tracy Berger, and I'm a scholar, an award-winning published writer, and a creativity coach. And my coaching practice is called the Creative Tickle, and my tagline is Tickle Your Genius Awake. And I really believe in finding fun, inspiring approaches that blend science and spirit or different wisdom traditions. So, okay, one, I'd really like you to take out a piece of paper and a pen, and or if you don't want to do that formally, just think about this. What are 2 to 4 things that you want to leap over this year in terms of getting to the next level in your creative practice and your creative output, in terms of what you're trying to produce? What's something that you really need to leap over to get to the next step? Like, what's that next up level? Okay, so think about that. Maybe write a couple of notes down. Great. So most of us, usually I find in my over decade and a half of coaching, usually we kind of have to grapple with the inner critic in some way, shape, or form in order to move forward on our biggest heart's desire. I know for me, the inner critic and overall perfectionism really kept me from living the kind of writerly and creative life that I wanted for a very, very long time. But there's good news. Okay, if you identify with the inner critic, and the inner critic is simply, we can think about that voice that it doesn't usually have our best intentions at heart in terms of moving forward with our creative goals. Some people call it the inner gremlin, the judge, the evaluator, that committee of people that you carry around, and committee of voices you carry around in your head. What I feel like is really important in terms of the lessons that I've learned over time is that the inner critic can only do one thing. It's meant to do one thing in your psyche, which is to protect you from shame, fear, embarrassment, right? So that's kind of we might think that's the role of the inner critic, right? It's to protect us. And it started off in a very, we might say, helpful way initially. The inner critic also tends to have a personal component and a cultural component. So the inner component could be, you wrote something or you created something, and maybe you got some, negative feedback that you took very personal. So a teacher, a mentor, somewhere along the line, we usually receive feedback that we take very much to heart. The cultural component is, what is the larger society that we are involved with? What does that say about artists, artistic production? And we can have inner critics related to that. So I'm just asking you to think a little bit about this idea of the inner critic and how it might be manifesting, inner critic and perfectionism, how it might be manifesting in your life, and how it might be really preventing you from taking the next big leap, right? And so let's break that down. So there are a couple of different things to work with when we work with the inner critic. And those of you who have been in my Chart Your Path to Publication course know a little bit about this. I've also written about this on my blog, The Practice of Creativity, and in other places. And I have been really a student of trying to think about, how do we support people to dismantle the inner critic or silence the inner critic or reduce the inner critic's role in our life. There are a couple of different things. I would say there's three transformational practices that help both to silence the inner critic and deal with perfectionism, and to help us take that next leap in terms of where we want to go with our creative work. You want to know what those three are? Okay, I'm going to tell you. So, one is the practice of gratitude. And I'm going to do a longer video on each of these. But gratitude is, I think, a life-giving practice, and particularly for creativity. Gratitude and fear, they can't exist in the same kind of emotional plane, we might say, right? And there's lots of robust ways to think about how to practice and express gratitude. And I'm not talking about like writing out in your gratitude journal, oh, I'm so grateful for, whatever, right? So a lot of times if we've practiced gratitude before, it's in a much, I would say, kind of understated way. I'm talking about gratitude where you are vibrating, right, with the appreciation of being a creative person in this moment and everything that is supporting you in your life, right? So I'm talking about dancing your creativity, writing about your creativity, embodying an appreciative mindset and attitude. And that really can kind of lift us out of the funk we may feel in a particular moment. But over time, a gratitude practice a gratitude practice grounds us so deeply in our own abilities and all of the support that we actually have around us, because we start noticing that, right? And what we notice in our environment, we tend to then build, that creates kind of a foundation for us. So gratitude is a deeply transformational practice, and can begin to silence that sense of perfectionism and inner critic. And I promise I will do a longer video on that. The second transformational practice that can be very helpful in dealing with inner critics is our affirmations. And affirmations are a mechanism to get us back to a neutral, if not positive, state of mind. So they're a thought substitute, that can really be a corrective for how we're thinking about our current situation. And I'm not talking about something that doesn't feel real to us. I'm talking about being able to stop repetitive negative thoughts. So it's not the first thought that you have that's negative about your work or about your creativity or about your prospects for your creativity. That's not the problem. It's the 50,000 thought that is the problem, that is negative, right? So we want to have a way that we cultivate that kind, supportive, that inner wise, if you're a writer, inner wise self, inner wise writing self, in particular, that can nurture us. And some of you know this story, but for me, in 2016, I launched this amazing affirmation practice where I did an affirmation on my blog every single day, and it completely changed my life. It was so powerful, and it really transformed many other people who were following along with me on that blog. And part of it is because we get to look at our self-limiting beliefs, right? So thinking about that mindset piece. And then the third transformational practice that can help us leap forward is decluttering. And not just decluttering to make our place tidy. That decluttering is helpful, but I'm talking about decluttering at a level that is about your kind of personal inner transformation and supporting that as a creative person, as well as your outer environment. And for creative people, we not only have to deal with whatever external clutter we might have, we often have to deal with inner critics, issues of challenges related to living a creative life, and all of those things can really weigh us down over time. So those are some really powerful practices, and like I said, I'm going to do a video on each of those. I actually have a 9-day decluttering challenge that is up. You'll find that in the link below, and that is feng shui inspired. It's not like any other challenge that then create. It's a challenge made for creative people in terms of decluttering. And if you're, I'd love you to check it out. If you're interested, you can see that below. So, okay, so now that you've got your list of what you might like to leap over, we've talked a little bit about inner critics. I would say one of the most powerful exercises you can do for an inner critic is to go into your imagination and invite that inner critic in. So see that inner critic fully fleshed out, fully formed. And this comes out of Clarissa Pinkola Estes' work that I found incredibly helpful. And basically, you invite the inner critic in to your psyche and you ask them, what are your concerns and complaints? And then you just take notes and they're just going to list all of their concerns and complaints. And they may show up exactly as your fifth grade teacher. They may show up as, a representation of your cousin. They may show up in a completely different way than you imagine. But I want you to see them, physically what they are. Do they have a smell? How do they talk? How do they sound? So you're going to get that in your mind's eye. And then you're going to do this process where you ask them about their concerns and complaints. And you're just going to write it all down. You're not going to interrupt them. You're not going to argue. And then the powerful part is you're going to thank them because they've been playing a role in your psyche for a very long time. You're going to thank them. And then you're going to say, I now retire you from this work. I understand what you've been doing. I thank you for what you've been doing, but now I can move forward on my own, right? And the other piece that is completely transformational is to then, and this comes out from the work of a writer and creativity guru, one of my mentors, Sark, also known as Susan Ariel Rainbow Kennedy. She encourages us to give those inner critics a new job. So you assign them a new role in your psyche that then they go do. And yes, it sounds a bit odd, but it is such a powerful practice. I've used this personally. I've used this with clients. They love it. So think about, if you have an inner critic that very methodical, repetitious in terms of the thoughts, maybe they should work in an egg factory where they're checking each egg that's coming, getting put on the line or something else that really would value their skills. The point is that they're out of your psyche. They're doing something else and they leave you alone to get into all the juiciness of what it means to be a creative person. So I would like to close with a brief meditation visualization. So if you just, take a moment, clear everything away, and then we can just kind of take a moment and just sit up nice and tall, and you can have your eyes closed, or if that's not available to you or not comfortable to you, just gently kind of soften the gaze. Okay, so we're here. We're going to breathe together for a moment. We're going to exhale together. Let's do that 2 more times. We're going to breathe in. And then we're going to exhale. And then we're going to breathe in. And exhale through the mouth. And just coming to a centered place, feeling your feet on the floor, feeling supported by the earth in some way. In your mind's eye, I want you to imagine yourself in one of your restful, beautiful places. It can be a real place like the beach or a favorite place in the forest. It could be a place just in your imagination, but I want you to go someplace that feels real to you in your mind's eye and that you feel calm and relaxed there. Beautiful. Now, once you've gotten it, I want you to imagine the one or two challenges that you would like to leap over, I want you to imagine them as that they look like pillows, and they might have the name of what that challenge is on the pillow. And they're just like a normal size pillow. And they're right in front of you. And I want you to playfully step or leap over them. Just take a big wide step, then another big wide step, or a leap. I want you to look around in your beautiful, restful place. I want you to feel a sense of accomplishment, knowing that when we work in our imagination, our visualization, it sets up the dynamics for it to become real because we have that greater mindset. Beautiful, everyone. And then when you're ready, just open your eyes, stretch a little bit. Love for you to play with that visualization, play with that meditation. Imagine yourself leaping over those things that are difficult or bother you or are blocks for 2024 and continue to, if you don't want to leap over them, maybe you can dissolve them. There's all sorts of fun that you can have, right? So part of it is trying to not feel like these things are so fixed and that you have tools to reimagine how to navigate them. All right, that's it for now, folks. Please comment on what ahas, insights came up for you. And I might see some of you in my amazing declutter challenge for creative people.